Hi guys, it's Steph here from the Novelty Corner and welcome to my channel and welcome to my recommendations of Australian romance books. Now these are books that are definitely written by Australian authors. Some of them are set in Australia, some of them are not. Some of them you kind of can't quite tell where they're set, but they are written by Australian authors, and this recommendations video was requested by Heather from Hea Booktubes, so thank you very much to her for the suggestion. I did check the majority of these books you can get on the US Amazon Kindle site. There are a couple that you can't, but I sort of had to mention them because they're some of my favorites. So if I can find somewhere where you can purchase them in the US, I will leave that link down below. I've got a couple of little categories here. So this is not one specific subgenre of romance. I've tried to include a variety. The defining characteristic of all of these books are that they are written by Australian authors. I'm going to start off really briefly with a very well-known Australian romance author, and that is Sally Thorne. She wrote The Hating Game, which is an enemies to lovers office romance story between Lucy and Josh. They are rivals for an upcoming promotion in their job, and they engage in all of these little games in the office with one another. And it's a delightful push and pull. We only get Lucy's perspective in this story. I didn't necessarily want Josh's perspective because Lucy is a very off-the-wall sort of character, and I think it works really well told in a single POV. I have two favorite scenes in this book. There's a paintball scene, and then afterwards Lucy gets sick, and so Josh looks after her. And there's also a scene towards the end of the book where Lucy has some choice words for a certain member of Josh's family, and that scene is really fantastic. And then there's also 99% Mine by Sally Thorne, which I didn't enjoy as much as The Hating Game, but I still wanted to mention it because this book is very different to The Hating Game. It is still a contemporary romance story, and this one follows Darcy, who has a twin brother, and her whole life things have always been a percentage of hers or a percentage of her brother's. And I'm also pretty sure Darcy has a congenital heart issue, and so she missed out on a lot of things growing up because everyone was worried about looking out for her and making sure that she was okay, which sort of exacerbated this, how much of a percentage of something is hers. And in 99% Mine, Darcy and her brother have inherited her grandmother's cottage, and they're planning on fixing it up and then selling it, and they hire one of her brother's childhood friends, Tom, to do that. Tom and Darcy have this attraction that they then pursue in the story. So there's also a brother's best friend trope in here. So the next series is young adult, sort of bordering on new adult. The characters are all, I think, between 17 and 19. Maybe one of the characters is in his early 20s, and that is the Circus Hearts series by Ellie Marney. These are romance books with a bit of a suspense element woven through them, and they are set in a circus. The first book is All the Little Bones, and this follows 17-year-old Saoirse and Colm, who have had to leave their previous circus because of something that's happened, and they're almost on the run, but then they find themselves at a new home in Clatch's Carnival. It is the story of how they settle in there, but also how they develop a relationship with each other. All Fall Down is the second book, and this one is about Fleur Catch, who is the daughter of the carnival's owner. And she is a trapeze artist, and a series of accidents have been happening in the carnival, and one of them injures her father, and so Fleur has to take over and begin to find out and unpack what's happening in the carnival. And her dad enlists the help of Marco, who is the son of someone else who works at the carnival. And it is the relationship between Fleur and Marco, and I really enjoyed it because we see such a change in Fleur's character from the first book to the second book. And the third book, All Aces, is the story of Ren, who is a contortionist, and also Zep, who is a card sharp. The thing that I really loved about all three of these books is not only the circus feel, because I love books set amongst a circus. I think it's just really atmospheric, and I love finding out all the different roles that people have. But I really loved all of the characters. I just thought that they were very well drawn. They were engaging, and then the little suspense subplots in it really enhanced the story rather than detracted from the romance, because all of the situations the characters find themselves in is a result of some suspense element, and it forces them to work together. Another couple of contemporary books that I wanted to mention, there is Summer Skin by Kirsty. This is more of a new adult story. This is set during college, and there is a rivalry between two sets of college kids. There are the Unity girls and the Knights, which are the boys. And it is the enemies to lovers romance between Jess from Unity and Blondie from the Knights. It has real riot girl feels to it, but it is very much a new adult style story. So if that's not your thing, it's probably not going to to tickle your fancy, but I did really enjoy it, and it was great to see a romance set in an Australian college/university setting. Then I wanted to mention The Aussie Next Door by Stefanie London. This is the first book in the Patterson's Bluff series. It is a contemporary romance. Our heroine is Angie Donovan. She has left the US and has fallen in love with Australia, only her visa is about to run out and she really doesn't want to return home. So she embarks on a last-ditch effort to find someone that she can fall in love with and marry within 2 months, which, you know, romance story. She is currently living next door to Jace Winters, who loves sort of the solitude and he loves routine and order, and he draws online comics, I'm pretty sure. And he's really frustrated with Angie living next door because she is loud, she's noisy, and she's nosy. She disrupts his regularly ordered life. But he eventually becomes drawn into her schemes to find a husband, however unintentionally. This book does feature ASD representation. Some of the terminology is probably a little bit outdated, but the representation in terms of the character I thought was pretty well done. But just be aware of that going into it, that the language may not necessarily marry up with what is currently accepted. A small town country romance book that I wanted to include is If Wishes Were Horses by Carly Lane. I don't actually have the physical copy here with me. I'm not sure where it's gone. This is the story of Sophie Bryant, whose husband has died, and she's also been attacked while responding to a domestic dispute situation as a paramedic. And as a result, she has some PTSD, and instead of returning to work in the city, she decides to take a posting out in a rural town. When she gets there, she decides to buy this little cottage house on the outskirts of town and to fix it up. And while she's going through the house, cleaning out some of the things that were left behind by the previous owners, she discovers the diary of a light horse trooper from World War I. Later on, she crosses paths with the local vet, Zach Conway, when she takes in a horse for treatment. And as the two get to know each other, they begin to recognize kindred spirits, and their relationship develops from there. This is a story that has a lovely sort of developing romance between two people who have lost the people that they thought would be their life partners. It blends in a lot of World War I history, particularly Australian World War I history, with a little bit of light suspense, and in some ways a little bit of magical realism towards the end. It is more of a closed door romance, so it's not explicit on the page, but it is a really well told story. And Carly Lane's books are just sort of like warm blanket, curl up on the couch reads for me. I utterly adore her books. A sci-fi romance by an Australian author that I've read is Yours to Command by Shona Husk. This is the second book in the Dirty Sexy Space series, and it's a novella. In this one, we follow Corporal Sienna Jade, who is sort of seen as a bit of a troublemaker within the military. She is a medic, I believe, and she is assigned to a spaceship that is carrying prisoners to a remote planet called Unity. The hero, Alex Tariel, wants to get to Unity, but the only way he can get there is by being a prisoner, so he commits a crime, gets assigned as a prisoner to this ship, and then becomes involved in the boxing fights that happen on board. And that's how he crosses paths with Sienna when he ends up being treated for injuries by her. It is a super short book, but it was very fun and very steamy. So those are some of my Australian romance recommendations. In the comments below, if you have read other ones, please let me know. I'm still trying to work my way through them. I have also now downloaded a whole stack of new ones to read so that I can hopefully do a part 2 in the future. But if you do have recommendations for other ones, let me know. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.